Hi everyone, my name's Anne-Marie. Welcome to Card Making Project 524 on the hottest day of the year. I've said that previously, but today it really is. So you'll have to forgive me as I'm just slowly melting. This week we've got three gorgeous projects, all shaker cards. Today and Friday are our normal Anna Griffin projects, both shaker cards, two very different styles. On Wednesday as well with our Fab Scraps project, again another shaker card. So hopefully it'll give you ideas of how to make them just that little bit different. Now today's project I think is great for the men in your life. I've used black and ivory as a colour palette, and I think it could be easily adapted for pastels if you were wanting to make it more feminine. But for the card that we make, I think it's very subtle and it would be ideal for any of the guys that you know. It's not occasion specific, so you would be able to add whatever occasion sentiment that you wanted to add, and I just think it's a neat way of making a shaker card that's a little bit different without it being too, I want to say pretty, but too floral, I suppose, if that makes sense. Everything I do use I should put in a detailed list on my blog, so please be sure to check it out. I love hearing from you, and I love seeing all the pictures and everything that you create. It's great. And I love knowing that you're watching, basically. So give me the thumbs up. Check out the blog for lots more photos. And I take photos of the inside and the outside. And there's the full item list. I do get people writing to me saying, what did you use for this? What Anna Griffin product was that? Please check the blog because everything's on there. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's have a look at today's gorgeous project. So for today's project, we're going to be using the all square die set from Anna Griffin. We're going to be using the circle, ornate layer and the shadow layer. We're also going to be using the shadow layer from the same collection in the square shape, not the ornate layer. We're also going to be using the Anna Griffin mini French fan dies, and we're going to be using this little fan here, both ornate layer and the shadow layer. And then we're also going to be using the Anna Griffin sentiment stamps and die set. We're going to be using this stamp here. It says have a happy birthday. Obviously if you don't have these sets you can substitute and use whatever you like. I'm just using this because I wanted the die that matches, because we're going to mask to make the stamp sentiment centre. It's very simple and you'll see exactly what I mean when we get to it. So that's what we're using for today's card. Our base card is one of the Anna Griffin 6x6 cards. If you don't have this, you can substitute it. You would be able to work this on a 5x7 for my friends across the pond. However, I just think it works with the square card. Now, all week we're making shaker cards. So I think this one, as I said in the intro, is ideal for a guy. And sometimes they can be quite awkward to make for, obviously. So you've just seen me use my bone folder to make sure I've got a nice sharp crease along the edge of the card. And we're going to start with the inside of the card. But I'm just going to put the card to one side because we're going to work away from it to begin with. Now the first layer I've got as an insert for my card is from the Eleanor designer collection from Anna Griffin, and I've cut it to fit the inside. Don't worry about the wax paper, it was just because I needed it for the double-sided tape in the centre. Because what I've done is I've cut it to size, but I've actually used it and die cut two fans out of the centre, because I wanted to be economical with it and I want my fans to match. Now it's double-sided cardstock, so I've cut the fans out and we're going to use them reverse side up. But just because I've cut the aperture out, it doesn't mean to say it's going to affect the overall look of it, because you're not going to see this. I've already got double-sided tape on the back of it, but what we're going to do is we're going to add the actual insert panel with our sentiment on. Now you can see I've used the sentiment stamp in the centre, and I've stamped it just with permanent black ink, and I used the matching die shape from the same set. Now, we didn't see this at the beginning, and that's my fault completely, but if you've got the stamps, you'll have the dies. And all I've done is die cut a piece of, now I've used crafting mask paper. However, you could do it on a posting note, as long as you keep the sticky at the top. And then I applied the little mask over the top of the stamped sentiment, and then I just blended the ink around it to make it look like I've actually spent quite a lot of time on that. And I think that looks really effective. Now, I'm going to apologise for the back of this, because I started doing something completely different and I didn't want to waste it. So I simply turned it round and inked differently. It's a bad habit, but you'll never know, so you don't see it. So I can simply peel the back of my tape off. I've got flat tape on the back of this. And this is where I've used the shadow layer of the all square die set. And now I can put this across the centre of the insert, and I'm hiding the aperture that we cut on the back of it. So now you would never know. Now, the reason we're working away from the actual card base to begin with is I've die cut the two fans from the centre of the base layer for the insert, and I'm simply going to add these to the actual insert, but I want them to go off the page. So I'm just going to position them roughly where I think they need to go, and I'm kind of matching up with the centre of the sentiment that we've got in the centre. So I'm thinking that's roughly, and you'll have to forgive me if it isn't, because I'm looking at a different angle to you. So I can press those down because I had tape on the back, and now I'm going to trim the edges, because this will make it work perfectly with the actual outside of the card. So I'm just trimming away the excess, and then I can do the same on the other side, like that. There we go. Final snip, and then we can add that to the inside of our card. Now, I use tape to actually hold the fans down, because it's just the ornate layer of the fan for the actual inside of the card. But at home you would be able to use, whether you preferred your wet glue or your tape runner, etc., or your Xyron. So now we can add this to the centre of our card. There's enough room to write on. There's enough room to write a nice message to the person. And I just think black and white works so well. Well, it's ivory and white, ivory and black. But how great does that look for a quick insert? So now we can create the outside. Now, this is where we're going to make the shaker. And I'm going to do the shaker first. So we're going to put our card to one side. I've got a piece of scrap black card. I've taken a die cut of the actual circle of the all square dies, the ornate layer. I'll go through the tape and everything as we go, but I'm just kind of showing you the layers. I've got a fancy base layer, and I've just inked the edge with gold ink, and then I've used heat embossing powder around the edge. I've got acetate, and I've got a circle of gold cardstock with flat tape on. Okay, so this is where I have to remember to make sure I go in the right order. So the circle that I have of foil, I'm going to add the acetate to on the back like that. So I've got flat tape around the edge, and it's just simply gold foil, and I've used a circle die to cut out a circle that actually fits the outer edge of the all square die. You'll see what I mean when we put it together. So this is red tape because I wanted something strong to hold the acetate, and I'm simply going to add this like that. There we go. Then I'm going to add the acetate to the back of the actual all square die, and that should just fit at the back of the actual die cut. And you can see I've got foam pads just along the edge. Next, I've got some foam tape that's in a strip, and I'm going to peel the strips away, and I'm going to run the tape around the edge of the actual gold circle that we've just slipped in between our die and added the acetate to. Now this is what's going to take the time. So while you're all sat with your feet up and enjoying watching what I'm doing, bear in mind it's so warm here today. Hottest day of the year again. Well, it really will be today. We're going to break all records today. So I can snip that away. Now I'm actually going to do 2 layers of this because I want, when my shaker moves, I want a good jiggle of the crystals. So I can peel the top of the foam away and get rid of that for the second layer. And see, all week when we do the shakers, I'm going to physically make the shakers so you can see how it all comes together. So now I can add the second layer of tape, and I'm just going to take the tape over the seams of where the 2 strands of tape joined previously to make sure we've got no gaps. Then I can take a second piece of tape and keep going around the edge like this. There we go. And will there be enough? Just. So we've built up the tape around the edge, and that's just hanging over a little bit too much, so I'm just going to push it back a bit. Now at this point, if you don't want anything to stick to the edge for your shaker, you could take some talcum powder or some of the chalk dust from an anti-static pad and just tap it in around the edge, or you could take some clear glue and just add it inside the edge and wait for it to dry, and then you can put the shaker together. We're not going to do that because I'm quite happy for the crystals to stick to the edges for me. We're not going to see many of the crystals, it's more of an effect for this card. So I've taken the top of the tape away, and now I can pour my crystals in to the centre. If you prefer to use sequins, you can use sequins. If you prefer to use glitter, you could use glitter. Make sure you've got a nice firm seal for glitter, because obviously it's quite fine and it might spill out. So I'm pouring my crystals into the centre, and then, now I was going to use a piece of scrap card to make the base, but I'm actually going to try and measure it up with the actual cut base. I kind of gave myself a get out of jail free card with a piece of scrap, just in case I can't see it. But we can marry up our ornate layer to our base layer and pop the back of it on, and I'm hoping that's going to be roughly straight. Press it down firmly to seal those edges in, and that is the shaker section. I don't know if you can see the crystals through it. Now, as I say, we're not going to see a great deal of the crystals. You can see them there, that's a good angle. But for the card we're making, it's just going to look so good. Now I can put this to one side, breathe, and we can put the rest of our card together. So I've got a base layer, again, from the Eleanor collection from Anna Griffin. I've just slightly inked around the edge. I've got flat tape on the back, and I can just add that to the centre of the front of our card. Next, I've made 4 corners. Now, I've actually used the die that I didn't mention when we looked at the all square set. I keep calling it the all 4 corners. The all square set. We did use the border die. I'm sorry, that's my fault. In my nervousness of showing you how to make a shaker. And I've actually taken photos of how I've made the corners, and I'm going to add them to my blog. And I've got 4 corners for the 4 corners of the card, and I've just got flat tape on the back of them. And it's a very simple process. I die cut the border in gold from the ornate layer, and then I cut the shadow layer, and I use scrap card, and I just simply cut the centre of it away. So when you see the actual border, it's this section here that I've made the corners from. But you'll see on the photographs, just check the blog because there's always loads of photos on there. Okay, so next I've die cut 4 background layers, 4 shadow layers for our mini fan dies, and 4 ornate layers, again from the Eleanor paper. I've got 3D foam on the back, and I'm simply going to marry the fan and the base layer together so that the black cardstock gives it a good shadow layer. And then I'm going to add these to 4 sides of the card like that, and then top and bottom. There we go. And the top one, the final one. I mean, that looks great as it is. You could just add a sentiment in the centre. But we're going to add our shaker and just pop it down, and I'm going to centre it up. Now you'll see the black crystals that I've just added into the centre of the actual flower on top of the all square round die, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to press that down. Now we've got 2 options here. We can either be a rogue and leave the sentiment off the actual card so that you can see all of the shaker, and maybe just tie a ribbon around the side and add a tag at the top. Or we can add a sentiment in the centre. Now, if we add a sentiment in the centre, it covers a lot of the shaker up, but you'll still get just a touch of it. I'm going to add the sentiment. Now, I know some of you are screaming, oh no, don't do that, you won't see it. But I think it gives a bit of an air of mystery. And obviously, if we're making this for a gentleman in this colourway, they will think that we're ultra clever, because they will wonder how we've got that crystal movement underneath. Now that is our card finished. The actual sentiment, I went a bit quick there, it comes from the Crown Sentiment and Embellishment collection. That, I think, for a guy, is such a super cool card. It really is. And the colourway, you could change it and use it in gorgeous pastel tones and make it for a lady. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would happily accept this. I think the colourway is so pretty, so I'm always asked for cards and ideas for gentlemen rather than using the pretty pastels, and I think this is a perfect one. Stands up perfectly. Ideally, you're gonna want a bit of padding, I would say, just because of that shaker in the centre, because you've got a few layers there as we've built it up. I know, as I said at the beginning, it's a square card, but you could adapt it to make it into the 7x5 cards. And then that way, for anybody with the postage issues, that would maybe help. But I think that for a shaker card, what a great way to start off our shaker week. Something a little bit different. And maybe you don't like to see the great big shaker on the front with the big sequins. And it just gives, I don't know, an air of, I think that's really classy, that actually. And I love the noise. I think that's great, because people, what have you done there? What is it? How did you get those in there? That's what they'll say. And what a great start for our week. So today's shaker card, we've got one shaker card on Wednesday with our Fab Scraps project, and then we've got another shaker card on Friday with our Anna Griffin goodies. So be sure to check the blog for the photos for the corners and for the extra photos for inside and out. I just hope you've enjoyed it and it's given you a few ideas and a bit of inspiration. So I'd just like to say thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time.